All right, everybody. Welcome in to another edition of Biscuits and SEC Live. I'm Hammer. That is Bossman. I am back from a week hiatus and a nice trip to the lovely state of Tennessee with my wife. We're excited for the show tonight. We've got quite a bit going on. There's possibly some more college football playoff talk with the 24 team format. Super League Part 2, where we will finalize our mega super Mondo League that everyone's talking about. And got a little bit of SEC baseball to talk about too, at least keep you up to date on who's winning ball games and who is not. And also too, I saw this shortly before we hopped on tonight. We could maybe at least touch on it. Kalen DeBoer, big time extension, got paid. He was already getting paid. He's now getting paid even more by Alabama. So a lot to get to tonight. Bossman, how are you doing?
Doing great. It's the first time I'm getting to see the sun in like 3 or 4 days. It has been raining nonstop here in Austin, but that means the fight with my HOA continues. But I'm almost finished with that. I've almost got them whipped. But other than that, things are good. There's a lot going on right now. We got SEC baseball in full swing, as you mentioned in the newsletter this morning. We've got 2014 playoff talk coming up, and then obviously our Super League, which we're super excited to get into and finish up on this episode in part 2. And also stay tuned, who's going to get relegated. We're going to see there's a couple teams here that are not going to make it, I think, that may surprise some people. So.
Yes, there absolutely are. So we should probably start getting into it. Before we do, you see the link below. We talk about it on every show. Sign up for the newsletter, please. It goes out currently during the off season, Wednesday mornings before our live show. Just keeps you up to date with all the goings on in the SEC. We're talking football, basketball, baseball, all sports, as well as around the country. We like to dabble in things that are relevant, even if they're not SEC centric. So it's just a good college sports newsletter, especially if you're coming at it from an SEC perspective. Totally free, and we ramp up to 2 times a week during the season. So come August, September, we'll be going Mondays and Fridays to keep you just up to date with everything going on. So would appreciate y'all giving that a go. You can sign up at the link below. And of course, if you hate it after your first edition, after you sign up, you can unsubscribe. No hard feelings. So without further ado, just real quick, I wanted to touch on this first, and then we can get into the 24 team playoff stuff. But DeBoer signs a big extension, 7-year extension, bumps him up to 12.5 per year. I don't know exactly what he was making before this, but that puts him, I think, in the top 5 of highest paid coaches. What's your reaction to this? I mean, I know it's not that big of a deal, I guess. It's not like he was going to get fired, but just curious to see what you think, because I had a few initial thoughts.
Yeah, I was trying to find the message board geniuses, but I'm just getting the podcast for some reason, which is not what I'm looking for. But okay, here I found it. But anyway, look, I think Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach. The Alabama expectations are, I think I said it last week with Avery on the show, Avery Barham from a New Gig podcast over on Total Coverage Sports, that, I think if God himself was the coach at Alabama, that he wouldn't fulfill the expectations of the Alabama fan base. And I respect it to a degree of how high the expectations are at Alabama. Like, you're one of the best programs of all time, if not, argument to be the best college football program of all time. So it's national title or bust there. And I understand that. They are completely spoiled from the Nick Saban era. We will likely never see something like that again. And frankly, spoiled from the Bear Bryant era. I mean, Bear Bryant, Nick Saban, the fact that you had those two coaches as, your legends, the two biggest legends in the sport, frankly, as coaching, when it comes to coaching. So Very spoiled, and I think that Kalen DeBoer is a very good coach, and to get Kalen DeBoer on the heels of Nick Saban is an unbelievable home run. And sure, it hasn't been exactly what Alabama fans would have hoped for right away. No national title, first couple of years, struggling a little bit out of the gate. However, I think if you stick with Kalen DeBoer, that he's going to get it right. And he has shown that time and again in his history that he gets it right. So just have a little patience, Alabama fans. I know that's shouldn't be in your vocabulary or isn't in your vocabulary, but I think that it's a little bit surprising based on the expectations of the Alabama fan base. The money, a little bit surprising as well. But I do think that it's the right move. And I do also think, I'm not exactly sure, but I think there had to have been some commitments made back when all the Michigan talk was happening. Because I think this is stuff that is just really now either getting finalized or just now leaking out. And maybe they wanted to let the smoke clear from all of that. Because it seems like that is what is happening, and not necessarily that out of the blue Alabama just decided to sign Kalen DeBoer to some big extension. I think there was commitments made to Kalen DeBoer and his agent as the Michigan stuff was really heating up, and all of that behind the scenes late last year was working its way through the channels. So that's kind of where my head is at with this. I don't think this was out of the blue, even though it may seem like that to some.
I'm kind of with you. I think the fan base's expectations, understandably so, because of what they've been through. He's probably, or he certainly hasn't met them. Two things can be true at the same time, right? He has not met the expectation. The expectations are a little out of line without Nick Saban as your coach. Or I guess three things can be true, but also he's still a very good coach. So I guess, I don't really have a ton in terms of this is a bad idea for Alabama, but it does seem like, and I think I fired off a tweet from Biscuits and SEC of just, this is another extension that it seems unnecessary, right? Yes, as you mentioned, there perhaps was more smoke than Alabama fans thought with maybe Michigan and Penn State this offseason. So this was probably in the works for a while. But again, look, our alma mater is the poster child for this of paying somebody a big extension before they've done a whole lot. And I don't want to say DeBoer hasn't done, a whole lot. Heck, he got to a CFP final, but that was his previous stop. And again, as you said, in his 2 years, he's missed the playoff, and then he went to the quarterfinals this year. So he's done well, but has he done well enough to already earn an extension 2 years into his tenure? I don't know. That's where I'm not an AD, but that's where I kind of look at it. And I'm like, hey man, we're already paying you a lot of money. We signed you to I don't even know what his original deal was. Probably a 5-year deal at a minimum. Hey man, if you want to talk to these other schools, which it sounds like he was probably he didn't take them, what are you supposed to do? I don't know. This to me, again, just kind of seems like an unnecessary move. And I say this, or I say that coming from my opinion. I do want to say for the record, though, Greg Byrne knows a lot more about this than me. And so it's hard to question what he's doing as an AD. He's done an excellent job there. I just look at this and think, why? What are we giving him a raise for? What are we extending him for 7 more years? He hasn't been bad, but why? He's got 3 more years at a minimum on his existing deal. What's going on?
I get that, but I also think it's part of the game. This is how it's played, right? The truth of the matter is, if you, and in A&M's case, in both cases, one, if you're an AD, sometimes the devil is better than the devil you don't. You lose a head coach like a Kalen DeBoer, who in the past, right, he's got all the history. He was basically Nick Saban's hand-picked successor. Nick Saban on the way out is I want him, right? And Alabama went and got him. And so to have that, Nick Saban has been totally behind Kalen DeBoer. He has been helpful as much as possible behind the scenes, and he's been vocal about that, and Kalen DeBoer said that as well. So, with everything behind Alabama, Nick Saban's behind Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer, his history, all of that. If Kalen DeBoer wasn't the coach at Alabama, and Michigan was going after him. Michigan's one of the most historic programs in college football history. If Michigan wants him, then Alabama should want him. Obviously, he is highly sought after, and so. And then what is in the unknown, right? If you're Greg Byrne, you're like, I still believe in this guy. He's made multiple playoffs. He just won a playoff game on the road. He went to the SEC title game. Okay, we didn't win the SEC title game, but we're knocking on the door. We're knocking on the door of the SEC title game. We're knocking on the door in the playoffs. It's going to get there. Have a little bit of patience. And if you lose him, and he goes to Michigan or to wherever, and he starts winning, right? Say he wins a national title, one of those other schools, and you went out and got a coach who doesn't win a national title. It is a big bet either way. If you keep Kalen DeBoer, you're making a big bet. But at least that your guy. You're all on the same page. You've been working with this guy for a couple of years now versus somebody else you're going to have to go out and get, and you're not really sure who that's going to be, what that might look like. Right. And so you kind of have to look at it from that lens. And, to another degree, to think back, you mentioned A&M about how they're kind of the poster child for this. And that's true. But look back at why they did that. They ended up being bad moves and ended up being quagmires. But at the time, you couldn't really fault the Aggies for doing what they did. They gave Kevin Sumlin that extension. Well, that was after the Philadelphia Eagles are coming after him. It's off of the Johnny Heisman year. It's off of 2 years of Johnny Manziel. And it's looking like, okay, they had a little bit of a down year after Johnny Manziel, but after the second year of Manziel. But most people in the country, most ADs in the country would give him an extension. Jimbo Fisher just had an amazing year, went to an Orange Bowl, and LSU comes knocking, right? Most ADs in the country are giving Jimbo everything he wants at that time. So it puts you between a rock and a hard place because you have a fan base that is not patient and expects a lot. And Kalen DeBoer has not delivered on that high of expectations yet. However, devil is sometimes better than the devil you don't. And it's a big gamble if you're Alabama to let go of a coach of the caliber of Kalen DeBoer. So, 7 years, maybe a little bit long, but just the name of the game, man, when you got agents involved and got to lock people up and try to build a program. And I think this is Alabama making that commitment. We're in with Kalen DeBoer. He's got all the time he needs to build this program, and we believe in him.
Totally fair. I guess then my issue, if you want to term it that, with all this then is with the game. Don't hate the player, hate the game. I'm not hating on Greg Byrne. I'm not hating on DeBoer, of course. The game is stupid, right?
Yeah, sure.
Having to lock this guy up when he's already locked up for multiple years is stupid. Having to give him a raise when he's been good at your school is stupid. And if you're Alabama, I guess what bothers me the most is nobody's immune to the game, because if you're Alabama and you can't look at a guy in the eye and say, hey man, I'm not playing the game, you're under contract, we're paying you a boatload of money already, I'm not extending you, then no one can. And we're all just going to keep playing this charade where coaches get extended every 2 years because God forbid we let them have only 5 years left on their deal and they're only making $10 million a year. We couldn't live that way as a society. So we have to extend them, which to me is just silly. And again, Greg Byrne knows what he's doing. I have no problem with them committing to DeBoer. It's just, it is, I think, a more hating the game, not the player in this instance, because I just think it's just a charade. He's not going anywhere. I don't think he's not leaving Alabama to go to Michigan with what they just went through at Michigan. He's not going to Penn State. Penn State isn't. When's the last time Penn State won anything? What are we talking about? He's not going to Penn State. And I wish Greg Byrne would have called him on that and said, dude, go. If you want to go, go. Yeah, go make that move, buddy. See how it works out for you. And like you said, devil, I think Kalen DeBoer is likable. He's probably good to work with. And you don't know what's out there if he were to leave you high and dry. I don't think he's leaving you high and dry. I think you got more chips, than he does, and you can call his bluff here.
We can quickly play this what if, but like if Kalen DeBoer does leave and this timeline doesn't happen, right? Who's your first call? Cignetti, right? It's got, of
course,
it's Cignetti because he's got the Bama connection. He just won a national title. You're calling Kurt Cignetti, but then if you don't get him, right, which you might not. I mean, Indiana has done. They've got a lot of money. They paid him, and he seems like, no, I'd rather be the Nick Saban of Indiana, which he is already basically, but could become if he wins a couple more titles there.
Yeah,
he'll be a statue. He'll be the legend at Indiana. But after Cignetti, like, I don't know, man. It's a total gamble after Cignetti, in my opinion. I don't know who else it would be.
Totally, but they would have their pick of the litter.
Yeah,
that's true. Just like they did. I mean, they hired the guy after he went to play in the national title game from a Power 5 school, Power 4 school that has money. Like, anyway, we'll digress here. This is a debate for a different day, and wasn't even really on the run sheet until the news broke. So let's. Also before we move on, just quickly. Also, Alabama just spending money, like it grows on trees right now. Nate Oates gets an extension too. True.
So, Greg Byrne is just okay. We're tightening this ship up. Ain't nobody leaving. Let's roll.
Yeah, we'll include some of this in the newsletter next week. But I did earmark a tweet. I think from Nick Kelly, who covers Alabama, does a good job. The assistant money pool. He had a spreadsheet that was showing since DeBoer got to campus what they were making, what they're making now, and like you said, they're throwing money around. A lot of guys getting raises. Courtney Morgan's making over $1 million now, I think, as the GM. Which again, hey, it's fine, probably justified, but whew, that's some money. I'm in the wrong profession.
Me too.
Someone hire me to work in your athletic department.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about this 24 team playoff talk from kind of the White House committee. I can't even remember. I'm struggling to keep all this straight. I know you looked into this, but there was the Trump meeting with the committee. They formed a committee where we've got committees about committees, but they're talking 2014. Yeah, they're talking 2014 playoff needs to happen, is my understanding. So walk us through what they're saying.
There's a couple things going on. I think there's actually a lot happening in the background that we have not necessarily been privy to over the last couple of weeks. So that commission or council or whatever you want to call it that President Trump called, those folk were folks coming together to figure out a way forward on NIL and all of that, right? The rulemaking around college athletics. It wasn't really supposed to be about the college football playoff or those sorts of things. It was more so like, how do we protect the integrity of college sports and not have it become this kind of behemoth and odd-looking thing that isn't college sports that everyone came to know and love. And that's kind of what's happening with the transfer portal and with NIL. Those are the two main sticking points. That was why that council was called. And they had a press conference about it. They had reporters in the room for the whole thing. Nick Saban was there, Tiger Woods, Condoleezza Rice, all these people. So that was what that was supposed to be about. However, I think that council has been staying in contact in the background, just talking through these different things that are going on in college athletics, one of them being the college football playoff. And so there was some stuff that came out about this, and Ross Dellinger has been talking a lot about it, reporting on it. And there was also, so that this council has generally been in favor of the 2014 playoff. Also, this week, the college football playoff committee has been meeting. They've got, some rules meetings and different things that are going on. Those are happening in Dallas, like in the last 2 days. And they came out and said there were discussions about should we expand it to 16 or 24 teams. So first of all, it looks like we're getting expansion no matter what, which my opinion, don't like it. 12 teams, that's where I think it should be. I think we're in a good spot right now. Don't understand why we need to go further than that. but it looks like we're probably going to 16, maybe going to 24. 24, not sure. Also looks like there is the potential. I think I've got the Dellinger tweet here. The deadline for a change to be implemented would be December 1st for it to be enacted in 2027. So it looks like that's unlikely to happen right now. Uncertain there's an agreement to be reached by December 1st, which means that the first time that we would get an expanded playoff is likely going to be in 2028 if they are able to make a decision in, what would that be, early 2027, I guess, or mid-December 2026. Yeah. So we will see what happens. This is the other Dellinger tweet on that White House committee. The White House committee is suddenly taking an interest in the college football playoff and believes the postseason should expand to 24 teams. This week here in Dallas, expansion discussions are expected to reignite. There is coalescing around 24. So sounds like there's some smoke to the 2014 playoff potentially is where we are going. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, I side with you here. I don't think we need to expand. I think 12 is fine. We brought this up last time we talked about expansion. 12 isn't broken. I mean, we've had 2 years of it, so we're not even giving it a chance before we decide to blow it up and just expand it. But I did want to say, I don't like it, but it seems inevitable. We've kind of felt like that for a while. This is sort of another, chip on the tree, another axe to the 12-team playoff tree, if you will, where they're just chipping away at it. They're PRing their way into this, floating the idea every couple of weeks from this conference commissioner or this person, this committee. And I just find it interesting in looking at this committee. So Cody Campbell, of course, is very involved, the Texas Tech booster. I think he's been in favor on record of a 2014 playoff, if I'm not mistaken. Tony Petitti is on this committee. He, of course, on record in favor of that. And then there's an ESPN chairman and a Fox Sports president. So obviously, all of a sudden, suddenly they want to expand. Yeah, I mean, of course. So it's just a money grab at the end of the day. And I think it's sad, but whatever. It's kind of the way the world works. So whether it's in 2028 or beyond, it sounds like 24 teams are coming. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. Mike here is saying round one college football playoff the straight over moves in 2029. Yeah. The college football playoff committee is developing a nuclear weapon.
Brought to you by the Saudi investment PIF.
Live college football playoff.
Live college football. We joke. It can happen, sadly.
Yeah, that's actually – there's some truth to every joke, right?
There is, unfortunately. All right, well, let's we got the Super League is kind of the main thing we want to get to. So real quick, wanted to touch on SEC baseball before we hop into our Super League. So, man, SEC baseball just rules every spring, and it's been awesome this year. Obviously, we're Aggies, so it's been extra awesome after the pounding we took a year ago, being number one to missing the postseason. So far, this season has been super fun. Of course, A&M rolling as of late with sweeps over Texas last week and LSU at the box this week. Other notables, it kind of went back to chalk. I think 2 weeks ago we had a lot of upsets, and this week, 13 Auburn goes on the road, takes 2 of 3 from number 20 Florida. Georgia, number 5, is rolling, leading the SEC, takes 2 out of 3 from Arkansas in Fayetteville. Vanderbilt having a pretty bad year, projected to, I think, miss the tournament as of now, but they go on the road, take 2 of 3 from Kentucky. Ole Miss gets the job done in Knoxville. So a lot of higher ranked teams going on the road, getting it done. Mississippi State sweeps South Carolina. Of course, Missouri gets swept by Oklahoma, and then Texas at home rebounds after the Aggie series and takes 2 of 3 from Alabama. Here is a look at our standings right now. As I said, Georgia leads, A&M right behind them, Texas right there too, and then a whole mess of teams tied there at 4. Any thoughts on last weekend or just the season so far?
I mean, it's like SEC football, right? Like, we take sports seriously, and there's just a log jam in the middle of teams just beating the ever living crap out of each other. But as a fan, that makes it fun. I mean, it's been a roller coaster for a lot of these teams. I'm sorry, Mike, I know our resident Gamecock in the After Dark network. It has really not been awesome.
Hey, maybe you'll get the Coastal guy. Come on, have some faith.
Yeah, hey, yeah, that's right. The best years are on the horizon for the South Carolina Gamecocks. But so last week for me was really it was rebound week. It was kind of like rebound week and get right week for Texas. They get a series win over Alabama after getting, I have trouble calling it a sweep, but they lose the series to A&M 2-0 in College Station. They rebound, get the series win over Alabama. You got Oklahoma there. They get a sweep over Missouri. They had, kind of been struggling a little bit recently, a little bit up and down. A&M gets right, just keeps rolling against LSU. A&M right now, look, I know I'm biased, but they are crushing the baseball. They look really, really good. They're up to number 7 in the polls. They're playing like one of the best teams in the country, and the pitching has been better than most expect. And Auburn gets right against Florida. Georgia keeps it going against Arkansas, and then get right for Mississippi State. Mississippi State had been on a serious skid recently, falling out of the top 10. I think they were in the top 5, and in 2 weeks fell to number 17 after they got swept in back-to-back weeks. So they go to Columbia, get the sweep against South Carolina. So LSU also, they're just in a free fall right now. It's pretty wild to see the defending national champs get swept by A&M, and I believe last week they got swept by Ole Miss, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, they're having a really tough year, and Jay Johnson has been just on it, talking about how, hey, this is never going to happen again. This is on me. Roster construction. We got guys that just aren't really into it. Can't seem to get them motivated. And each week, A&M just teed off against LSU over the weekend.
They did. I mean, hey, complacency. You win 2 national titles in 3 years, I believe. Mm-hmm. This is surprising, certainly, but you could understand. You can understand why they're sitting at 6-12 because, a lot of entitlement perhaps seeping in there. The other one I just want to call out, Tennessee, kind of back down to earth, unfortunately, with Vitello gone. We kind of expected that. I mean, I don't want to upset a bunch of Vols fans here. I know you've talked to some of them on Twitter. They invented college baseball, but they were not really a program on the map until Vitello got there. And I hope they stay because they're fun. The stadium is cool, great environment, great fan base, but a little bit of a reality check, perhaps that it's maybe was a little more Vitello than the program, but we'll see. I mean, it's year one, and they're not bad. I mean, they'll be in the postseason, I think, so they could make a run. I'm just saying they're not ranked. They're 8-10 in the SEC. That's a pretty big drop off so far compared to what they had been.
Yeah, I would just caution Vols fans. Look, A&M went through this last year, kind of way worse than Tennessee did, I feel like.
Much worse, yes.
And so it's year one. Josh Elander, he was a Vitello guy. So it might just be growing pains in year one of him figuring it out, and look at where A&M is now, right? Year 2 of Michael Early, and Michael Early has these guys rocking and rolling. I mean, A&M had the injuries last year, which it seems like now, with hindsight, that was kind of the main issue, was all the injuries that A&M had. However, there was definitely growing pains, and Michael Early will admit readily to you that, he was figuring it out too. And so seems like potentially that's what's going on in Knoxville, right? Well, I think we'll find out next year. I don't, this year's kind of, I don't know. I don't want to call it a wash just yet, but it's, it's not what Vols fans have come to expect from their baseball program. That's for sure. And so I think give it a little bit of space this year, give it a little bit of breathing room, and then next year, let's see what you got, right? For John Sheelander, let's see if you can get it done.
Agreed. Well, let's get into it. Super League, that's what at least I know Mike is here for. Hopefully everybody out there. We got almost 50 of y'all watching, so appreciate it. But this is what we're tuning in for, is the Super League. So in case you missed our show 2 weeks ago, we'll kind of reset here. This is just a thought exercise of if college football was to separate from the NCAA and kind of go rogue and set up their own Super League, which has been talked about, what would our team, what would it look like according to us? And we decided on 6 divisions with 8 teams per division, leaving you with 48 total teams, including relegation. So for those of you counting at home, I believe we have somewhere around, here's a nice map for you, but I believe we have, it's like 65 Power 4 programs right now. So whittling that down to 48, you're not only going to leave out, your New Mexico and New Mexico State, but you're going to be leaving out some power conference teams. And so we'll see who we left out today. With our final lists being publicized, we'll see who made the cut and who didn't. To go back to last 2 weeks ago, pardon me, we went over, let's see, it was somewhat regional, but also somewhat rogue. It's hard to exactly say, but more or less, and I'll go over the actual teams, but we kind of went through Northwest, Midwest, and Northeast regions. So I kind of went a little less regional than you to recap. So I had an Eastern Seaboard Super League division with these schools. So Louisville, Miami, Florida State, VT, South Carolina, Clemson, North Carolina, Penn State. You, more regional, went with a Northeast League with Penn State, Pitt, West Virginia, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Kentucky, Louisville. We both had the exact same Midwest. So this division was the same for both of us. We both had Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Notre Dame, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana. And then similarly, I went with a more West Coast division with Washington, Oregon, Southern Cal, Utah, BYU, Arizona State, and Colorado. You a little more regional with a Northwest League with Washington State, Oregon State, Stanford, Cal, Utah, and BYU. So tonight we will round out with the last 24 teams. If you're thinking of this regionally, it's going to be kind of Southeast, Central, Southwest, South Central, Texas, more or less, with all the schools that they have, and then up kind of into your lower Midwest. Think Big 8 historically, Southwest Conference, and then obviously SEC, kind of those geographies. So anything I missed, or do you want to just get into our teams?
No, I think we can rock and roll.
Great. Well, I'll go ahead and start with your Southwest. So again, you focused a little more region specific, really heavy geography and historical rivals. I was a little less of that and a little more kind of looking for brands where I could. I tried to keep geography and historical rivals in mind, but again, just as an example, you brought back the Apple Cup and the Civil War in the Northwest. I did not. Washington State, Oregon State, I kept out, not dealing with that. So you've got your Southwest Super League with Southern Cal, UCLA, Arizona State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Texas, and Oklahoma State. So walk us through what you were thinking here and how you landed on these teams.
I feel like this was one of the other than the Northeast, like one of the more difficult ones to figure out, because you went a little more West Coast, like you said, and that allowed you to kind of grab some of those teams a little bit in the Southwest, and pull them in. And I, like you said, in the Northwest, I brought back the Apple Cup and a couple. I tried to preserve those rivalries and that regionality, and I really honed in on that. I have always felt like that's what makes college football, or at least really was like the seeds of college football, making it what it is, and kind of what we love. For me, the Southwest, I mean, look at this again, right? Like, it's a ton of rivalries, right? So USC, UCLA, Arizona State, Oklahoma, Texas. I paired them together. You may notice that Texas A&M is not in there, and that's because Texas A&M has always considered LSU their biggest rival, and they really don't care about Texas at all, as everyone out there knows.
Of course.
Right. So jokes aside, Texas and Oklahoma have always been joined at the hip, and they've always felt that way, right? And the Red River rivalry, whether these two were in the same division or not, is one that should never be stopped, right? That game should always be played. And so I felt like putting them in the Southwest together, you preserve that rivalry. Oklahoma State, let's bring back Bedlam. I hate that Bedlam's gone. Bedlam should be played every year as well. Texas Tech and Texas. You may not remember, but Texas Tech was beating Texas fairly consistently not that long ago. And Texas Tech definitely hates Texas. Texas likes to act like, Texas Tech is a fly on the butt of their steer, fly on Bevo's butt. But that rivalry has some juice too, especially now with the amount of money that Texas Tech is spending. Okay. Like, Texas Tech and Texas could really become something again. So there's a lot of rivalries there, a lot of regionality. I think this little division here in the Southwest would be a ton of fun. And then, you also spark some new rivalries, right? Like, hey, by the way, who doesn't want to see Lincoln Riley have to go back into Norman? All right. I for sure want to see that, right? I also want to see him go to Lubbock, Texas, because he's from Muleshoe. He's from right down the road in Lubbock. Okay. So there are a lot of fun little things here, a lot of fun history. Hey, how about the Aikman Bowl? UCLA and Oklahoma, right? Troy Aikman's alma maters. He transferred from Oklahoma to go to UCLA. There's all sorts of little tidbits in here, I think, that are fun. And I think this conference would be, or this division here would be a good time.
It would be great. That would be a very fun division, conference, what have you. And before anyone says, oh, Texas, they're not Southwest or whatever. Again, the geography's, take it with a grain of salt. But I do want to remind everyone, back in 2009 or 10, I'd have to go back and brush up on my A&M history with Bowen Lofton, our former president. But Texas already tried to join the Pac-12. They very much considered themselves at one point in time, a West Coast or whatever school. They were trying to get out of the Big 12 and join the Pac-12 at the time, or Pac-10 at the time, I believe, before a lot of realignment took place. So the Longhorns have no problem traveling out to the West Coast. I don't know about Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. They might, or Tech, they might feel like they don't belong there. But again, who cares? They would quickly learn to love and hate the schools in Arizona and Southern Cal.
Not everybody either in that division there that I had is this way, but I mean, understandably so. Texas has always felt like culturally they fit a lot more in with USC and UCLA and all those kind of hippy dippy people out in California versus anybody in Texas, right? So, hey, let's give them what they want, right? Go hang out in Southern California and all these Southern Cal people who come to Austin and, cultural exchange. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
Right. No, that makes sense. Well, we set it up last week, but we're going to start diverting pretty heavy here, I think. Because you've got a Southwest regional team, as you said. I kind of went West Coast. My first up, is really, it's geographical. I just don't really know what geography it is, because it's sort of the Great Plains, I guess, if you want to call it that. But it's basically, I've recreated the Big Eight, except I've added Iowa, who is a traditional Big Ten team, right? So we're just going, again, we're going old school Big Eight. Iowa State, Kansas State, Mizzou, Nebraska, Oklahoma, OSU, and Iowa. Prior to the Big 12, way back in the history books, kids, even before my time, really, I guess I was around. I don't know. I have to look back at when this formed. But the Big Eight in the Southwest Conference, or the Big Eight basically ate the Southwest Conference. And so Texas and Oklahoma were not in the same conference for a long time, but played every year. A&M and Tech and all those schools were in the Southwest Conference. And then the Big Eight was your Midwestern, basically your Barry Switzer and Tom Osborne corn-fed boys from the, Great Plains. And we're bringing that one back. So we're getting some history back, getting some geography back. I think it fits great again. Iowa, adding Iowa to the mix would be fun, since I had Colorado going with the West Coast. So that would have been the old, Big Eight traditional team that I'm replacing with Iowa. Big 10, Big 8, Iowa fits anywhere. It's Hawkeye football, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, we just differed on the regionality. Like you said, you expanded out further than I did, and you kind of meshed a couple of these different ones that I've got going on. I put more of this, which we can segue in here. This is my central. Yeah. All right. So I've got a couple of the teams that you had over there in your kind of Big Eight, or, my equivalent Southwest, in your Big Eight. And I pushed some of those teams that you had in your Big Eight into what I'm calling the Central. So there's A&M in here, TCU, the Horned Frogs made it in, and Nebraska, LSU, Kansas State. Hard to see that logo. Sorry, it's really bad. Pretty dark. Iowa State, and Mizzou. This one, to me, this was maybe the toughest one that I did. Actually, that's a lie. The Southeast was the toughest. This one, to me, I think actually, though, was probably the second most difficult, because there's some teams that I had to eliminate that I'll talk about in a little bit when we reveal the relegation piece of this, which we'll discuss. I think, if you guys think that we got anything wrong, let us know in the comments. But also, if you guys want to, do this thought experiment yourself, I know Mike Huseman is going to do this on Off Season After Dark. He's got, as we talked about last week, a little bit of a different structure that he's going to go with. But, send us an email too, contact@biscuitsandSEC.com, if you want to go through and do this yourself and tell us what we got wrong and what you think you would do differently. But yeah, there was a good amount of teams in this Central here for me that I had to cut that, man, they've got a good argument of being in. And, TCU is one kind of on the edge, right, of being in or being out. But for me, my argument for them being in is they made a college football playoff title game very, very recently. I mean, I don't know how you'd leave a team that did that out of there. I mean, there's also you could probably even consider leaving Nebraska out, right? But for how poorly they have been the definition of mediocre.
They've been terrible. Yeah.
In the last 15 years. And so, but I mean, they're a college football blue blood if you really want to, pull out the history. So I had trouble leaving them out. So anyway, this one I think brings back some old rivalries, keeps some of the newer rivalries. A&M LSU's in there. A&M TCU I think would get spicy pretty quickly. You've got some of the Big Ten rivalries that are in there. Iowa State is kept in there. Mizzou is just kind of a floater, but there's no way you can leave them out of this. So they have to go somewhere. To me, this is where they fit the best. And I mean, they've won, what is it? 2 out of 3 years have won, and back-to-back seasons they They won 10 plus games. So there's no way that Mizzou's getting left out of any of this. So Mizzou has to be in. So for me, this is where I felt like they fit the best.
Yep. And I think, you brought it up again. We'll just go right into mine. I think there'll be some teams on here that people will notice you had left off that are probably not also making your Southeastern list. So we can start to kind of make some dominoes fall here because similar to what I did with the Big Eight, I basically rebuilt the Southwest Conference. The only exception is, of course, LSU, who was not in the Southwest Conference because Rice was. And no offense to Rice, but not really getting considered for our Super League. So I've got the old Southwest Conference with Arkansas, Baylor, SMU, TCU, A&M, Texas, Texas Tech, and then again LSU sliding in there. I think they would fit well, although they're them and Arkansas are the only non-Texas schools. I think, again, we're talking history. This was a great conference back in the day. NIL, before NIL existed, was kind of pioneered by this conference with A&M and SMU and the Gold Trans Am and, of course, Texas and TCU and Arkansas. Never had any trouble paying kids under the table back in the day. So I thought this would be fun to kind of bring back and keeps it very regional as well. Again, all those schools other than Arkansas and LSU are in Texas, and Arkansas and LSU. Arkansas has the historical rivalries from the Southwest Conference, and then LSU, of course, quickly can become rivals with anybody, but also has the connection with A&M and Arkansas. So they've got two kind of historical rivals right there as well.
And some with Texas too. There's definitely some that Texas and LSU don't get along very well either. So there's three in there pretty quickly for LSU that. Yeah, and that is probably, of the ones that you did, the most regional. I mean, that is like centralized, in terms of that division, and they would beat up on each other. It would be a lot of fun.
Yep. All right. Well, let's get to it. Let's close it out. Let's get to the Southeast, see who's left, see who you left off, and then we'll get to our omissions. So, Bossman, your Southeast is revealed. Walk us through it.
Okay. Ole Miss, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, the Clemson Tigers, and Miami. This one, man, like I said, this was the toughest one of any because it's like we talked about last week, all right? Or 2 weeks ago when we revealed our first 24, there are so many teams clustered in the Southeast. And so for me, trying to keep it super regional and with, historic rivalries and things like that, quickly you're like, oh my gosh, this is where most of the champions, the blue bloods, like a lot of this is concentrated in the Southeast, as we know, covering the SEC, but even outside of the SEC, right? I mean, hey, look at what my Southeast is. There's a couple in there that are not from the SEC that are blue bloods. At this point, you can call Clemson a blue blood. They won two national titles very recently. They've been to multiple national title games. They've been struggling a little bit in the last couple of years, but that was a dynasty very, very recently. Miami, a historic dynasty. Man, Miami is on the way back up. They were in the college football playoff national title game just this season. So, and hey, you want to talk about a team that you're not seeing on this list right here? How about Florida State? Okay.
I hope little Bossman isn't watching. I'm terribly sorry about this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure I'm going to get a text message here or a phone call if he's not watching, because I know he will be watching at some point. Will let us know. But that's what I'm saying. Look, there are so many teams in that region. How do you leave them off, or how do you pull one to go the other way, to a different region?
Well, I think you revealed it earlier. It's you get rid of some regionality.
I don't agree with that. You can't do that. And here's why.
For me, I was not going to leave out a program like Florida State, who has won a national title in the college football playoff era in favor of Oregon State or Washington State or Cal or Stanford. I'm sorry. Florida State Yeah, they were already in my
the band is on the field, okay? And Florida State hasn't been playing on the football field for 2 years. They've been terrible.
The band is climbing up trees with no clothes on in Berkeley. That's where they are.
Smoking trees, yeah.
The band has been quiet for a long time.
There is some fairness in that for sure. There's definitely some criticisms that can be made of these lists for different reasons, what have you.
Yeah, and here I'll reveal my Southeast, and then we can get into the omissions. And Mike, okay. I know Mike. I did watch, even though I wasn't on last week. I watched the show, so thanks for coming on. And I know you're going to have a comment for me on this one. So I made this graphic especially for you because I do have Mississippi State in here, and I want you to know if you're excluding Mississippi State, you're excluding Bully as well. Okay, so it's not just all the Starkvillians, Stark Vegas, and all the Mississippi State fans you'd be letting down, but you'd be letting down Bully. So I just want that on the record.
That does hurt. Yeah.
But then, again, I went pretty traditional here. So a lot of mine, again, I think last week were kind of quasi-regional, historic conferences, but kind of just cobbling it together. And with this one, this week's rendition, I went pretty traditional with the Big 8 Southwest Conference, and then, traditional SEC teams here with Ole Miss, Bama, Auburn, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. And this might be fair. I'm a big fan of Sir Big Spur, Mike. And when we can go right into omissions here, because Mike, I included Sir Big Spur in my Eastern Seaboard. I'm afraid Bossman has left Sir Big Spur and the Gamecocks in his omissions.
Yeah, so, I mean, look at that. Well, okay. One thing I just want to go back very, very quickly here to my Southeast, because that is a thing of beauty. Okay, let's just, before we talk about the omissions or think about that, right? Let's think about how beautiful my crafting here was of this. Okay, Georgia and Clemson hate each other, right? Tennessee, Florida hate each other. Miami, Clemson hate each other. Okay, Alabama, Auburn, the Iron Bowl is in this. Hate each other. All right, there is a lot of animosity across this division here. It would be a ton of fun. One thing I do want to mention, Rick, my friend, Captain Biscuit, I know you will love this. I'm sorry that I didn't do it, but I did think about it. I thought about leaving the Auburn Tigers out of this and putting in Florida State, or there was a couple others, Georgia Tech, we're potentially going to get in there as well. Mississippi State, maybe South Carolina. I debated leaving Auburn out of this. And the reason being is what have you done for me lately? Auburn has been bad for 10 years, okay? Since Gus Malzahn left, they have not been a very good team, all right? The trouble is that I decided I had to leave them in because there is absolutely no way that at the first year of the Super League that the Iron Bowl does not get played, all right? The Iron Bowl is one of the most famous rivalries in college football. It has to get played, right? So Auburn, Alabama pulls Auburn up by their bootstraps, hauls them in, and says, you're in this division so that we can beat up on you again, even though Auburn gives them a good run for their money every year. So I left Auburn in because of the Iron Bowl. That game has to be played in the first year of the Super League. All right, my omissions here. These are tough. Mike, I am sorry that I left off your Duke Blue Devils, but I had to do it. Houston, you make a good point here, Mike. He told me, Houston's a tough omission here. Good football city, massive market, good boosters. Totally true. Hey, that's why this is our omissions here. This is a lot like this is our relegation level, right? So these teams would kind of be split out, and there would be relegation, and that's kind of what we talked about last week. We don't have exactly what the relegation would look like. We can get into that in a minute, but these are teams that would have a chance to get up via relegation, right? So it's not like we're saying forever and ever, you're done, you have no chance. But in the first cut of the Super League, these are my cuts. SMU's tough too. I know they made a college football playoff a couple of years ago. TCU got the nod over them because they got to the college football national title game. Okay. I know asterisk 4-team era, not the 12-team era, all this stuff, right? South Carolina, I get it. I don't want to lose the Palmetto Bowl, but we wanted to make this fun and difficult. Florida State, how do you leave them out? I get it. Baylor, to me, I had to leave them out because they haven't been that good since the Art Briles era. They had basically one good year. And other than that, it hasn't been that great. So Arkansas is a tough one to leave out too. There's so many natural rivals for them. They've been a good football program. They've got national titles in the bag. However, at the end of the day, they've been bad for a long time, like sustainably bad. Okay. How do I put them in any of these conferences on the first cut of the Super League? For me, I just couldn't do it. And I think Arkansas fans, once you fire Hunter Yurachek, maybe I'll bring you right back. But good luck on relegation. Spend the money. Win the relegation league, and you're back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, we have a lot of – here's my list, right? We have a lot of overlap. Vanderbilt, NC State, Duke, Wake, Houston. And then that's kind of where we divert a little bit, I guess, again, because you kind of tried to go more regional. And I'll be honest, the reason I did not do that is because of this, and not to say I didn't leave off some, relevant or worthy programs. I think you could argue Vandy, NC State, Duke, Wake has been a solid program. Houston, Pitt, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Georgia
UVA
Tech
was in the ACC title game last year.
Right. So I don't want it to seem like I, am not leaving off relevant or good programs. But I did try to go a little more, I guess, brand heavy. And I quickly realized when doing the exercise, looking at it geographically, I was going to run out of spots in the, I'll just say eastern half of the U.S. basically. And so, I tried to limit the graphics to Power 5 teams that were left out, or current Power 4 teams. And that's why yours is a little more crowded because you left off, I left off, Oregon State and Washington State, who you included. So that, kind of leaves you with, all right, Florida State, South Carolina, or Arkansas and SMU. Like there's 2 extra that you had to leave out that I did not. And then again, I went a little more historic, like you said. I think Baylor, I included Baylor. Does Baylor have a better case than Houston or Duke or NC State or Pitt or West Virginia or Georgia Tech or UVA? Man, hard to say. Like you said, maybe if you look at what they did in our Art Briles, but they haven't been great since then, and they were dismal before he got there. So that's a team that I included that maybe doesn't deserve it, but I went for the kind of historic, all right, Southwest Conference, we're going to rebuild that. And teams like Pitt and Boston College, Syracuse that have sort of been conference vagabonds over the last however long, got left out. But it's hard. It's a hard exercise because, again, in terms of on the field results, like you said, Arkansas, they're passionate. They have a big stadium. They fill the stadium. It looks a lot better than a Pitt game on a Saturday or a Syracuse game. But on the field, Georgia Tech, UVA, sometimes Syracuse, Duke, Houston, all those, or even Auburn, would be competing. So it's tough. That's why we also added the relegation piece, like you said, which I guess we could, kind of talk about. I am not a European soccer fan, shocker to all of our listeners out there. So I know they have relegation. I have no idea how it works. My thoughts on how relegation would work here, pretty simply, any of these divisions, if you finish last in the division, you're done. So we got one new team every year into a division. You cycle in six in, 6 out every year.
Mm-hmm.
You could even go 12, I guess, if you want. But that was kind of my thought. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the most obvious. The tough part about that is, and we talked about this pre-show as we're kind of talking through scenarios, like what does this look like? And maybe what you would have to do is essentially create the divisions below, right? Okay, so you got the D1, you got these divisions, the ones that we just created, right? However those ended up. You got 6 divisions, 8 teams, right? Those are your 48 who are in the Super League. And then you have the second level, Division 2. And in that level as well, you would, in the first iteration of it, essentially create those kind of generally regional, expansion packs, right, of the teams that did not make the first cut for the Super League. And so however you would fill that out, right, maybe there's 6 teams in those divisions versus 8, right, or maybe it's 4 or whatever. And if that's the case, then you at least have a little bit of regionality that you could plug in to these 6 that have a general region to them. Because if you don't, I mean, looking at mine, right, of the omissions, like they're kind of all over the place, right? I mean, like,
yeah,
you could have, and in one year, say if on the map, I mean, here's the map, right? Like in one year, if you do it, a different way to do it could be to do just like how the Europeans do it, I believe, which is it's just, lowest on the table, highest on the table in the second tier. They just they flip, right? And that's what they call the standings, is the table. And so you get the worst 3, worst 4 teams, right, in the league, they get relegated, and then the best 4 teams in the lower tier get elevated. And so if you did it that way, just, worst and best, and they just flip, well, then you would have trouble like fitting them in the regionality piece of that, right? That would be tough. And you would be kind of almost reconfiguring divisions, which could be fun. You could reconfigure divisions. Okay, the divisions are going to be this year, but I think you want some stability in those divisions, at least of the regionality piece of that, and also just to continue rivalries and things like that, right? And to redo it every year would be tough. So I think what we generally arrived at is that it would be best if there's at least 6 teams that get relegated each year, right? So from those 6 divisions, 6 teams get relegated, 6 teams get elevated. And likely that is, as I'm thinking this through as well while we're live, that is because you also have done a little bit of regionality piece to the bottom tiers, because the bottom tiers, then you can flip, right? If you are in the Midwest division that you and I came up with, right? We both had the same Midwest division. It was the only division that we had that was the same in our Super League. But say Illinois, for instance, is the worst team in the Midwest Super League for any given year, right? Well, then you could say that Northwestern, right, was in the second tier. You fill out that second tier of the Midwest, generally the Midwest teams. Well, Northwestern was top. Okay, well, Illinois and Northwestern, they move, right? Northwestern gets elevated, Illinois gets relegated. So to me, that's probably the best system. It would have to be fleshed out a little bit more. But if anybody else has other ideas, would love to hear them in the comments, or shoot us an email or hit us up on Twitter. But that's generally how I think it would have to happen in order to keep some of that regionality and to be able to keep the cohesiveness to some degree of the divisions.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, just looking at this map, right? These are all the teams in theory that would be eligible to be in the Super League / be in the second tier that could work their way up. And I guess we're missing maybe North Dakota State, who will be FBS this year, I believe. But as you said, you kind of want to keep it regional. So, maybe the sort of Sun Belt, is kind of tied to the Southeastern Division, right? And okay, so if Southern Miss balls
Tulane
out one year, Tulane and Mississippi State stinks, then they switch. Troy, UAB, whatever. So yeah, I think you kind of link them. The one thing that would be very interesting with all this, as fun as I think it would be, the idea of bringing back, I think you could, again, I think the regionality is you could have it more so in certain divisions than others, but traditional rivalries, right? I think you could bring a lot of that back. However, once you introduce relegation, you might lose it. You just might lose, hey, Oklahoma State got relegated and we haven't played Bedlam in 10 years because they stink and they're not in they're not in our conference anymore. So it would put those games kind of on the relegation chopping block too, where it's like, okay, yeah, we'll play each other every year as long as we hold up our end of the bargain. But if you slip, it's just done, until you get back. Like you said, like the Iron Bowl, Auburn probably would have been relegated at some point over the last decade, and they just wouldn't play the Iron Bowl the next year for at least 1 year, which would be crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, one that I don't have in there, or two that I don't have in there, which I know sounds crazy, but again, like, what have you done for me lately? Like, Florida State has been rough for the past 2 years. Florida State doesn't play Clemson every year. Florida State doesn't play Miami every single year. Florida State doesn't play Florida. Like, those three rivalries are big ones in college football. And in this scenario, I'm saying that in year one, that doesn't get played because Florida State is not good enough to be in, right? At least, and to some degree, in my scenario, they're a victim of their region, right? Because I went hyper regional, and so, God, they're close, right, on the chopping block of that region. Whereas, sure, I understand what you did, makes a lot of sense in order to be able to include them, but there's not a lot of teams out west, and I wanted to be hyper regional and bring back some of those other rivalries right out west and try to revive some of those. So yeah, but I think, it's funny kind of what we're talking about with relegation, right? Because some of these schools that we left out, for me, I mean, NC State, and not that they're a power, but they've been pretty good, like, above average for a long time.
Yeah. Dave Doran's been there for a
long time.
Yeah. Well over a decade, because he wins 7 to 9 games a year and they're good.
Yeah. Had a couple of 10-win seasons there, recently. South Carolina just recently was on the verge of the college football playoff, 9-3. Houston could easily become a very good. Vanderbilt, for goodness sakes, right? 10 wins last year. Like, yep, not good enough, right? But I think right now, that is Hammer's favorite picture.
And another good one too for Mike. But our SEC bias is showing, because both of the ACC title teams didn't make it. Yeah, Virginia. Yeah. Well, you had Virginia. I
have Virginia.
Not.
Yeah,
you have Virginia, not Duke. We both don't have Duke, and then I don't have Virginia. So I'm the real SEC bias. Again, that's Mike. That's what I included. Mississippi State. It's probably where the rubber meets the road. I included the team from Starkville that, you probably wouldn't have, or if you're not including all the SEC teams, wouldn't have. But I'm just too big of a homer, I guess.
Yeah. So. It was a really fun thought experiment. I mean, I think it would be super cool if something like that happened. It will never happen. But the last thing I wanted to say about it is that the relegation piece of that, and right now, okay, we've talked about this so much on the show, but between NIL and everything else going on in college athletics, it has always been an arms race. Before NIL and everything, it was the facilities arms race, right? Now with NIL, it's the facilities and the NIL arms race. Like, how much are you paying for your roster? And if you had something like this with relegation, I mean, think about it. Florida State, they're going to be just piss and vinegar, right? Like, absolutely not. Like, we are in. So what's going to happen? They're going to spend like wildfire to say, no, we're in. Okay. So they're going to win, the championship of the second level and then to get back in. And once they get back in, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to keep spending to try to figure it out, to get back, to make sure that we never get relegated again. Right. So the arms race of money in this scenario would be just lighting money on fire until we can get back and make sure we're in the Super League and when we never leave. Right?
Yeah. And one final note on this, as we wrap up, again, I don't keep tabs on the Premier League, but this would make, aside from the matchups and the games, this would be very entertaining because those games at the end of the year that maybe now don't mean a whole lot other than for pride would mean a whole lot, right? If you're, we'll give an example of two SEC teams in the last handful of years that have not been very good. If you're Auburn and Arkansas and you're playing November 15th and you're both, 3-6, that is a big game.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to finish last.
No. Yeah.
So that becomes a big game. And then on the flip side, in the lower division, those games become big, right? Okay. No offense, but like right now, Boise State playing UNLV when they're both 8-0, it's big because there's playoff implications on the line. But nobody really thinks that those teams are like a threat. It's big because, they're going to get a seat at the table, but they're going to get pounded once they get in. Well, now it's, it could, in just looking at my scenario, I mean, we could have, Virginia and NC State being 8-0 and, hey man, we win this game. Like we're in the driver's seat to get back up to the big time. Like this is becomes a big game and there's a lot on the line. So I think that could add an element of fun as well.
One thing too, that is an issue with the way that we're talking about relegation, right? Is okay. We kind of landed on the scenario of like, you have to have a buddy conference, right? Or a buddy division underneath you. However that shakes out, whether it's 4 teams, 6 teams, whatever. In the lower division, you got to have a buddy conference so that, regionality sticks and you can go back and forth. The trouble with that is if you've got these 18 conferences or these 18 divisions like we just, laid out, you could certainly have a scenario where, this happens in the NFL, right? Where you've got one division and this kind of rotates every year in the NFL. You got one division, maybe it's 1 year, it's the NFC East, right? And the NFC East has 3 teams that are really good, So maybe that year, say it's the Southeast, right? That Southeast that I had is a gauntlet. If I can find it, where is it? Here it is. Right. Yeah. Like there could be a year where these teams are very good, and a lot of them have very good records, right? Some of them also they're going to have not good records, okay? But there may be a year where these teams have better records, and the teams in, say, this conference, like everybody's just losing. Like the teams can't win. They have to play. They're playing 9 conference games here in this scenario, or what are they going to play? They're going to play 7, right? 7 conference games. So then you got to play outside conference games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or out of conference games. So there could be a scenario where Arizona State goes 3-9 or whatever. Right. And a couple of these other teams are sitting there in the dumps too, because they're not winning very many games. Well, in that scenario, you've got a Southeast that there's teams that have won a lot of games because they're winning their out of conference games and they're beating up on each other in the middle. And then you've got on the other side, on the West Coast, you've got teams that are losing all their out of conference games against the other teams in the Super League. And so you've got a heavy on the bottom and a heavy on the top. And so is there really fairness in, a team that from the Southeast who obviously is better than a team from the West getting relegated? The answer is no, it's not really fair. However, the truth of the matter is like you kind of have to do it to keep the regionality if that's what you want to do. Otherwise, you have to say the regionality goes away and it's just like the 6 worst and the 6 best. And in that case, you just plug them in and say, we hope they fit kind of somewhere.
Yeah.
But the issue there too could be some of the top 6 could be, maybe you get, there could be a year where SMU, Houston, and Tulane are 3 of the top 6 that could be coming up. Well, if that's the case, like they are like super concentrated regionally, where do you put them? Maybe you could pull Tulane to the southeast, you pull, Houston to the southwest. I don't know. But all I'm saying is that is like a one flaw, with it that you would have to work on solving.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So, like we said, fun thought experiment. Let us know in the comments where we are off base. If we left your team out of here, Mike, sorry about the Gamecocks, JT, Florida State, or, on my list, if you're a West Virginia Mountaineer, a Blue Devil, NC State, Cav, a Terp, whoever you are, let us hear it. Let us know where we messed up and let us know how you would do it. Either a different format or using our format, because our format was pretty challenging to whittle it down to just 48 teams, but would be fun and could be fun to see how it shakes out down the line, because we might be headed here in some way, shape, or form in the next 10 to 15 years. So
I'm with you on the relegation piece too. It would make it it would give a lot of those games so much more juice at the bottom of the rung too. Like I'm going to be watching those games at the bottom of the rung because they're going to be wars because nobody wants to get relegated.
No, not at all. Not at all. Especially if you're signing contracts and like I'm a sophomore and I'm locked in. I'm not going down there. I got 2 more years here. I'm a freshman. I'm not. So anyway, that's a whole nother rabbit hole we can go down another day. But let's close it out. We don't have this week a Mike Leach Coach of the Week. Apologies for that. The graphic work here was kind of like our in season with all the graphics we were doing, just with these various divisions. So that took us a while. Plus, there's not a whole lot going on. So we don't have a Leach Coach of the Week, unfortunately. We do have a Biscuit of the Week, though. So as noted by my absence last week, I was gone. I was out of town on vacation. We were in Tennessee. And so my wife and I stopped in, of course, to one of the biscuit restaurants, one of many. This one is in Chattanooga, and it is the Bluegrass Grill, kind of downtown or in their general downtown area. And if you can read that on the left side of the picture of the front, it says the best darn biscuit in Tennessee. So we were walking by. I made note of that, and we stopped by the next morning, obviously. And I got a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit with cheese grits, of course. It was good. I don't think it's the best biscuit in Tennessee, if I had to take a guess.
Okay.
It was good. Okay. The biscuit I didn't think was that exceptional. But the sausage was really good. It was actually link sausage. Like it was like a brisket sausage link that they'd cut in half and folded open. So that was very good. But the biscuit itself was solid. But again, I have a hard time believing it's the best in the state of Tennessee. So more research needed in that category, in that department, to find the actual best biscuit. But a good, affordable place to stop for breakfast if you are in Tennessee, in Chattanooga specifically. It's well worth the visit, I would say. But probably not the best biscuit in Tennessee.
Well, to be fair, it says it's the best darn biscuit in Tennessee. So there's also the category of the best biscuit in Tennessee, the best dang biscuit in Tennessee, the best damn biscuit in Tennessee. There's different categories to this. So they may well be the best darn biscuit in Tennessee, in that category. That biscuit looks like your grandma's biscuit. You know what I mean? Like, I mean that in a very good way, in an endearing way. Like, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing, like, a picture. It's like not like the most perfect and beautiful, but it looks like it's very good, and one of those ones that might surprise you, and you take a bite out of it, you're like, oh, this is the best darn biscuit in Tennessee.
Right. Yeah, so it was good. It was good. It was kind of a it wasn't very flaky. It was kind of dense, kind of a dense biscuit. So, if that's your thing,
Yeah.
could be good. But again,
Hardtack.
I'd happily eat it again. I will admit I was expecting a little better given the sign out front. But again, more research is needed. We'll have to conduct some more boots on the ground work in the great state of Tennessee to figure out if they're lying or if that is the true claim, the best darn biscuit in Tennessee.
It's well marketed. I like the name of that. Also, you guys went to Nashville, but maybe you have some others coming up. But our friend Ellie Mae Williamson gave us some good recommendations. I know you had already gone to a couple. Did you guys go to any in Nashville as well?
We did not, unfortunately. We were coffee shop going in Nashville.
Influencing, yes.
Yes. So my wife loves coffee shops, and we frequented quite a bit of coffee shops, but we did not specifically go to a biscuit place other than the Bluegrass Grill. So again, more research needed. We'll have to plan a return trip or task our friend Corey Burton to find the best one. So yeah, that's the biscuit of the week. That's the show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate y'all tuning in during the off season and walking through this fun hypothetical with us. Sign up for the newsletter, please. We're keeping you updated on everything this season. I mean, hey, spring, I said it in the newsletter this morning, spring practice is done for all but 2 schools, which means we're just a couple months away from fall camp. So don't blink. It'll be here before you know it. We'll be SEC Media Days coming up in a couple months. So we'll be here soon. Get geared up.
I will say this too for everybody out there listening. So over the years, what we've done, at first we did the 14 and 14. Then when the SEC went to 16 and 16, 16 teams, we did 14 and 14. Then we did 16 and 16. We typically have done a long write-up on those on the website. I think this year we're going to try something a little bit different. I think we're going to do it on the show. And so we kind of got to schedule this out and think about this. But coming up soon, we will be doing our 16 and 16 series, which means we'll be taking a deep dive into every one of these programs in the SEC. And we do it a little bit different, I think, than everybody else does in the college landscape, college media, because we look at top to bottom, nuts to bolts. How is this program looking? Where are they at? And then we give them a biscuit ranking out of 12. And we have formulated this. We have perfected it over the years. And it's however many biscuits out of 12, you get a biscuits rating. And it's everything from how much are you raising for NIL? What is your roster cost? What is the state of the program? How is your coach? Like, where is the fan base with the coach? Fan support, like all that stuff goes into your biscuit rating for that year. And it can fluctuate year to year. So I think folks would be interested to tune into that. And we'll be getting into that a little bit later here in the off season. And I think those will be some fun shows. So I hope you'll tune in.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, everybody. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll be back same time, same place next week. See y'all then. Have a good week. Have a good weekend. Appreciate y'all.